Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be showing you Cracked Polish's latest collection in collaboration with Ethereal. This is called the Euphoric collection and it features 6 shades, 3 from Ethereal and 3 from Cracked. And I am also going to be showing a duo that Cracked is releasing as well as their jelly of the month. So as always, I will save more of my thoughts for the end after some comparisons. For now, let's just get into the swatches. Starting with the ethereal shades, we have So Chill, and this is described as a soft and sheer grade lavender with a violet pearlescent shimmer. I feel like it sounded like I said violent, but I meant violet. But yeah, this is a super sheer, very ethereal type of polish. It unfortunately had one of those jelly bases that just pulls away from my tips for whatever reason, so apologies if that bothers you. It definitely bothers me because it looks like I'm not painting my nail all the way to the tips, but I am. Aside from that, the formula was okay. It didn't feel as smooth to work with. I feel like there was a little bit of like a pull in a way, but it wasn't super thick or goopy, so just wanted to mention that since I have heard that ethereal polishes tend to be goopy or thick, but this was even coverage and it did self-level beautifully. I would just say to be careful with your brush strokes to make them as even as possible since it's a more pearly kind of finish. Next we have Cool Night, and this one is described as a dark denim blue with a magenta pink shimmer. I absolutely love this one. I just love how rich and dark the color is. The formula was also really beautiful, super pigmented and smooth. I was actually really impressed with the coverage because I was expecting it to be a lot more sheer, but I would call this like a solid 2-coater. I think on the first coat you can definitely tell that more denim blue base. The second coat definitely deepens it up a lot and I think makes it look a little bit purple, but maybe that's just the shimmer sort of coming through. But either way, it is just super gorgeous. I just love these really dark but bold kind of colors. It's just so fitting for winter. I also noticed that the shimmer in this one shifted from magenta to a fiery red in extreme angles. And the last ethereal shade is Bliss, and this one is described as a taupe with large and small particles of ultra blue shimmer. So while I am a fan of these bright blue shimmers, it's just the typical blue shimmer that you see in a lot of indies where it's super glowy. I unfortunately don't love the base color of this one. I was actually surprised to read that it's described as a taupe because I don't know if you could tell in the bottle at least, but it looked like the same exact grade lavender sort of base color that was in the first shade called So Chill. I would say if anything, this one is even more sheer. Like the very first coat looked like it was barely tinted, so it could kind of pass as a topper, but then on 2 or 3 coats as seen here, you do see more of that purpley base, which again is definitely like a pretty combination, but it just looks like the same color as So Chill with a slightly different colored shimmer. Now for the Cracked contributions, we have Crimson Ecstasy, and this one is described as a deep red with red shimmer. And I don't know if you could tell the subtle sparkle in the bottle, but there is also a silver reflective glitter in here. It unfortunately is just lost on the nail, I'm assuming because of how pigmented this shade was. As you saw on the first coat, it was so full coverage to the point that I maybe would call this a 1-coater, but I think it would just depend on your application. Since I'm heavy-handed and have shorter nails, I would probably wear this in 1 coat if I'm in a pinch, but it definitely is fully opaque in 2 coats, and here I try to include a little clip under flash to catch some of the reflective glitter, and you can see it's pretty subtle. The next shade is Mysteriously Me, and this one is a dark eggplant purple with purple shimmers, and I was just so in love with this one. I mean, this was a 1-coater, at least again for me because I'm a little heavy-handed. So if you do thinner coats, you might have some light spots here or there, but this is definitely dark enough that it's gonna be a solid 2-coater. As I'm sure you can tell, this is one of those shades that is so dark it looks practically black, and I feel like the camera is just not picking up how glowy the shimmer is. It is so beautiful. And rounding out the collection, we have Infinite Thrill, and this is described as a glowing violet blue with a pearlescent sheen. And this is another one that I absolutely loved. I am just such a sucker for this bright blue shimmer, especially paired with the base color. I think it just complements it so well. The formula on this was really nice. It was rather pigmented for a shimmer, not the most even, like I did have some light spots here or there, but I found it perfectly opaque for me on 2 coats. And even though this is described as pearlescent, it wasn't super brushstrokey. But I still was careful with my application to sort of minimize any wonky brushstrokes. And here is the collection worn as a skittle. I am so sorry I forgot to get a video clip of the skittle, so I just have the photos that I took. But I really love this color story. It is just so beautiful for winter. If I'm being honest, I'm definitely more partial to Cracked Polish's contribution shades. I really did love Cool Night from Ethereal, but the other 2 shades just look a little too similar for me. Cracked is also releasing a Lunar Luxe Duo, and it consists of the first shade called Midnight Phase, which is a deep navy black blue crelly. And as you can see, this one had a super pigmented formula, definitely on the more like cream crelly side, where I guess in some angles you can see a little bit of that squishiness, but because the shade is so dark, it basically gets fully opaque in 2 coats. And I feel like at that point, it just kind of looks like a navy blue cream. I wish there was a little bit more of that squishiness coming through, but it is still a beautiful navy blue. And the other shade in the duo is Moonboots, and this one is described as a gray crelly with a silver magnetic pigment. I personally would call this like a taupey gray. It definitely has a lot of warmth to it, and even though it is described as a crelly, I would personally say it leans a little bit more on the jelly side. You can see how sheer it is on the first coat, where there's a lot of nail line. It does build up a decent amount on 2 coats, but I personally could still see through to my nail line and even my half moon. I do think it is even enough that you could wear it on 2 coats if you wanted, but if you wanted a more full coverage look, I would definitely recommend doing a 3rd coat. And of course, I am going to be showing this with the velvet effect. Today, I'm going to be using ILNP's horseshoe magnet, which has a 30-pound pull. So again, you can definitely see how sheer this one is on the first coat, where it just has that more jelly kind of finish. I accidentally forgot to include the application for the 2nd coat, but here is what it looks like, fully magnetized. And again, you can definitely still see some nail line, even if you do this unmagnetized. So if you want more full coverage, I would recommend doing 3 coats. So since Moonboots had a slightly jelly kind of base, I wanted to test it over Midnight Phase to see if it would work as like a topper, but as you can see, it kind of doesn't. Maybe if you're more careful with your application, it could work because that last stroke is really noticeable on me. And to sort of test out how crelly leaning Midnight Phase was, I thought I could layer it over Moonboots, and yeah, you can just see how pigmented this one is. There's only a whisper of that magnetic stripe underneath, and I was careful to do like a thinner coat than normal. And lastly, I am so excited to announce I have my first jelly of the month in PR. This is Sweeter the Juice, which is described as a magenta jelly. So even though I never experienced it with a jelly before, my bottle had a little bit of ugly bottle syndrome, so don't mind that too much. But it does make me wonder if maybe that had anything to do with my experience with this polish, because while it is a beautifully vibrant magenta jelly, I just didn't have the best application with this. I don't know if I just grabbed too little on the brush, because I did have to dip back in, and maybe that's, you know, what caused the unevenness. So because of that, I wouldn't say that it self-levels that well. I did try to do a slightly thicker 3rd coat to sort of even everything out, but I feel like you can still see a little bit of a lighter spot down the center of my nail, so that was a bit of a shame, but I still really love the color. So getting into comparisons, we're starting with So Chill and looking at it next to Holo Taco's Camera Shy from the Declassified 002 set. I thought they pretty much had a very similar base color, but the shimmers are a little bit different where Camera Shy is more pink. And for whatever reason, I thought that Mooncat's Poisonberry was going to be similar to So Chill. They kind of look similar more on the nail than Camera Shy did, but So Chill has more of a gray base with a blue shimmer, so definitely not dupes. Then for Cool Night, I wanted to show this next to Mooncat's Fields of Lavender since that's what I immediately thought of, but seeing them side by side, they just don't compare. If anything, it's actually a lot more closer to Mooncat's Cyborg, which is not around anymore. That one has a dark blue base with this red sort of multi-chrome shimmer. They aren't exact dupes by any means. Mooncat's is a little bit more sheer, more noticeably blue in its base, and the shimmer is also a lot more shifty. And then for Bliss, I was immediately reminded of Mooncat's To All Who Ghosted Me, which is a gray base with a blue shimmer, and Alchemy's Farside, which was a Black Friday exclusive from last year. That one has the same kind of blue shimmer, but a slightly more purple base. So these all look similar in the bottle, but on the nail, you can definitely tell the difference, not just in their base color, but also in their coverage. Bliss is super, super sheer. Next, for Crimson Ecstasy, I of course have to show this to a couple of cracked reds. The first one is Eat, Drink, and Be Cherry from the Food Coma collection. While it's also a red shimmer, it's just a little too light to compare, so I thought that 23 Flavors was going to be a little bit more similar to Crimson Ecstasy because it's darker than Eat, Drink, and Be Cherry, but it's not dark enough, and it's also a little bit more metallic-y. So for an even darker red, I have Situationship, which obviously is a little too dark. That one's like a blackened eggplant kind of maroon shade. So for potential dupes, I immediately thought of Lurid's Blood Bag, which is a really dark, shimmery kind of red, but I feel like the shimmer in that one is a lot more subtle. It's only in certain angles that it looks very similar to Crimson Ecstasy. And I did also want to show this next to Mooncat's The Arsonist because that's another recent shimmery red that's a little bit on the darker side. It might not look like it here, but on the nail, it actually is pretty similar in color to Crimson Ecstasy. Not quite enough to be a dupe, I would say, but maybe that's just me being picky. I could see some people just not needing both of these. And lastly, I wanted to quickly show this next to KBShimmer's Noel It All or Noel It All because that's a red reflective glitter that is absolutely packed. So if you're not a fan of reflective, you might still like cracked because it's super subtle. Then for Mysteriously Me, I knew I had to show this next to Secret Purple, which was this limited edition creation that Monique did a couple of months ago, I want to say. I thought for a super dark purple, I could also show this next to Holo Taco's Queen's Curse. I thought they were going to be more similar, but they are not, at least when Queen's Curse is unmagnetized because the shimmer is just lighter and a little bit more pink leaning. So Mysteriously Me is definitely closer to Secret Purple. That one just has a slightly more metallic kind of finish, so not an exact dupe, but a close alternative. And lastly, for Infinite Thrill, I was immediately reminded of a couple of shades. The first one was Ethereal's Lorraine, which was a polished pickup shade. They definitely look super similar in the bottle, but Infinite Thrill has a more pigmented purple kind of base, so I thought maybe it would be even closer to Mooncat's Dark Night of the Soul, which I feel like in the bottle they look like they are dupes, but seeing them on the nail, you can see just how dark Mooncat's is. So while they do all have like the same kind of blue shimmer, they just are not dupes. I don't know if it's the lighter base color, but I feel like the shimmer in Infinite Thrill is a lot more glowy. And then I thought to show this next to Holo Taco's Shadow Lake from the recent Underglow collection because that's another bright blue shimmer in this gray purple base. And while it is a little bit closer to Infinite Thrill than Mooncat's was, it's still a little too dark. Moving on to the duo, for Midnight Phase, I wanted to quickly show this next to Cirque's Navy Jelly because it's a navy denim blue jelly, but that's obviously way too light to compare. If anything, it's a little bit more closer in color to Cirque's Indigo Jelly, which is an indigo inky blue jelly, and as the name suggests, it is a true jelly, so that one is a lot more sheer and translucent, giving this like glassy sort of effect. So I wanted to show these in one coat each, just so you can see how pigmented Midnight Phase is, where it barely has that squishy sort of look to it, and then doing a second coat pretty much makes it fully opaque, while it just deepens the color in indigo jelly, but it doesn't really cover up any visible nail line. Even doing a third coat of indigo jelly doesn't give full opacity, so I wouldn't call these dupes. So since Midnight Phase is just so opaque, I thought I could just show it next to a couple of really dark blue creams. The first one that I have here is ILNP's Liberty from the Stars and Stripes trio, but that one looks a little too light, so for an even darker navy blue, I have KBShimmer's Stream On, Stream Away, which just by judging the bottle shots alone, I thought they were going to be much closer, but on the nail, you can see just how dark and inky KBShimmer is, so none of these are dupes. And as a last ditch effort, I thought I could show this next to Mooncat's Into the Abyss, which is their dark navy blue cream. I thought these were going to be even more similar, and look, I'm not trying to gaslight you. I know that they look almost indistinguishable here side by side. There is a subtle difference though, where Mooncat is a little bit more dusty, so I thought to try to show this in like a slightly different lighting setup where it is a bit more overexposed, but at least you can see the difference here. So again, this isn't exactly color accurate, but I would say that these are the closest to being dupes. Then for Moonboots, I wanted to quickly show this next to Mooncat's Death Star from the recent Star Wars collab, because that's another gray silver kind of magnetic, but they look totally different. So I thought maybe Smokescreen would be a little bit more similar because it has like a warmer gray base, but that has a pink shimmer and also Holo, so also not dupes. I actually think the closest shade was ILNP's Crystal from their Eternal collection that released earlier for winter. That one sort of has a taupey base with this strong silvery metallic shimmer. So if you're wearing Moonboots unmagnetized, they're not exact dupes, but they definitely have very similar vibes where these shades could be like sisters or cousins. And lastly, for Sweeter the Juice, I of course have to show this next to Cirque's Bitten Jelly because I was immediately reminded of this shade. It's definitely the closest to being a dupe, but without being an exact dupe. It's hard for me to describe like the color differences because these are just those weird like magenta shades that are between pink and red and purple. I think I would say that Bitten Jelly is just a little bit warmer, like a little bit more red leaning, while Sweeter the Juice is like a true magenta. I would say that Cirque also had a more self-leveling kind of formula, but it also was more sheer on 3 coats. And even though I knew this wasn't going to be an exact dupe because this is a cream, I did want to see Sweeter the Juice next to Olivav's Magi because I just thought color-wise they were going to be very, very similar, but Magi is a little bit darker and a little bit more red. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Cracked and Ethereal's Euphoric Collab, the Lunar Luxe Duo, and the Jelly of the Month. So as always, I would love to know your thoughts on these releases because in general, I am such a big fan. I feel like this is such a beautiful like color palette. Even though they are all separate things, they just work and play so well together. But starting with the Euphoric collection, I definitely am a fan overall. I think the colors are super beautiful. The formulas were lovely. The only kind of complaint or gripe that I have was with Ethereal's polishes. I don't have that much experience with using Ethereal before. Like I've only picked up a few of their shades, but I've always heard that their formulas are not the best, and unfortunately that's kind of my experience, where I feel like they could have felt smoother and like thinner, but they weren't bad either. If anything, my biggest gripe with the collection, and more specifically with the Ethereal shades, is that I just found So Chill and Bliss to be like a little too similar. I know that the shimmers are different colors, and even visually like they look different, where So Chill has more of that like pearlescent look, while Bliss has more of that like speckled shimmer particle look. But I feel like because the bases were so similar, it just kind of I don't know, it just looked too similar for me. So I really wish that the base in at least one of those shades was like more purple or something, and it still would have tied in so well with the collection. But I do really love Cool Night and obviously the Cracked Trio. Those were easily my favorites. I just thought the formulas, the color, like everything was there for me. Well, I guess maybe with the exception of Crimson Ecstasy, not really giving in the reflective glitter department, but as a dark, shimmery, red, metallic sort of shade, definitely a fan of it. So, you know, overall, I thought it was gorgeous. And then for the Lunar Luxe Duo, I thought they were really nice together. Like, they make a great duo, but I just have my different complaints for each of the polishes, where the magnetic was a little too sheer for me. I wish it was a little bit more pigmented, as well as having like a stronger magnetic effect. The color is gorgeous though. Like, I love a good midnight blue that's like so inky. Definitely a fan of that, and you know, it looks great on 2 coats, but I do wish it was like a little thinner to get more of that true like jelly feel. And lastly, for Sweeter the Juice, obviously obsessed with the color, love the name. I just wish that I loved the formula a little bit more, and I'm still trying to figure out if it's like my own issue with application, where I feel like I've had that before with other cracked polish shades, that they don't always self-level beautifully on me. And it just kind of sucks, because it's like I love the color, but the application is where I sort of struggle with it. And it could definitely be user error, because, you know, sometimes I just struggle with painting my nails. But I definitely did prefer like the jelly formula for that shade, since it is a little bit on like the thinner translucent side, which I would definitely consider more of a true jelly finish. So yeah, overall, I definitely am a fan of these, and whatever complaints that I do have, I think are mainly just personal preferences. But I would love to know what you think about these, and if you are interested in getting them, as a reminder, I am an affiliate with Cracked Polish, so I will have my link and code in the description box down below. As a reminder, my code with Cracked Polish is now unlimited use, so you can always save 10% off. As always, a big thank you to all of you who do use my code and support me through that. It really means so much. But even if you don't pick anything up, I would love to know your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.